Honestly, I do not know why. Sometimes people think that important tips have to be grandiose and elaborate, or maybe brand new, fresh from the idea factory. Very, very not true. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Jan. Welcome to another episode on this channel, the Save Money More with Jan channel. Back in the 1980s, that was my decade of being an elementary school teacher. Okay. And I have to say, looking back at the 1980s, let's just have a little refresher course on what the 80s felt like in case you were around as a younger person. Maybe you weren't even born yet, but I can assure you of this. The 1980s had fantastic movies, amazing television shows, great stuff on the radio, great music. Love, love, love the music from that decade, and so on and so forth. But we also had our trials and tribulations, economically speaking, as well. Okay, in the economy you would hear about on the TV news, or in our own personal economy. So now I'm going to dial it back to my personal economy. So while the music was great and the movies and the TV shows were amazing, we all have our own personal economy, right? We even talked about that in a not so long ago video, and I hope you check it out when you have an opportunity. But back in the 1980s, I was an elementary school teacher in a Catholic school. And I have to say, and everybody knows this, the whole world knows this, teachers do not make a lot of money. And especially if you're like in a private school situation, many is the time that teachers make even less than in the private sector than even the public school teachers make. I'm just saying. This was my reality. This was my choice. I chose to go there. People believe that God calls certain people to that profession when they're teaching in that manner. All right. So I did teach every subject, including religion, and that was just part of my life. But what else was a part of my life, and I have no regrets, by the way, was a wonderful, meaningful, and for me personally spiritual experience. And I have zero regrets. I am so glad. I'm so glad I had been given that opportunity. Mind you, in the same school that I attended as a child. So a lot of the teachers that were still there were my teachers when I was a child. So it was kind of a little bit of an awkward situation, but a fun situation nonetheless. All right. But I also dealt with the pay isn't that great. And that was my reality. I remember back in the 1980s, literally stretching a $20 to $25 grocery store budget each week, literally, to meet my rent, to meet my basic needs, always make sure there were four walls and plenty of money for travel. Because where I was living at that time was what they call a two fare zone here in New York City. What's a two fare zone? That means you need two methods of mass transportation to get to a certain area. So from where I was located at that point, at the two fare zone, I was paying four transportations a day, not just two, four. That means I needed to take a bus to my subway, two separate fares. Okay, so that was just to get into the city to go to work, and to come home. Obviously, I had to do the same thing on my return trip home. Okay, well, okay. So that's the way it was. I had a lot of car fare going on. I had, and when you're a teacher, especially in certain private schools, they want you to dress in a certain manner. You couldn't show up in any old sloppy old outfit. You had to be a good example for your students. So, pretty tough dress protocols back then in that school, and trying to stretch a whopping $25 a week at the grocery store. Was I able to do it? Yes. Yes. But remember, let's keep in mind that we are dialing it back. $25 was worth about, in my guesstimation, probably to about what 35 or $40 would be worth today at the grocery store. Okay. So was I able to make ends meet every month? Absolutely. I had a plan. I did work on my envelope system. I did have a budget. I did keep track of everything. But sometimes people look for an elaborate, I don't know, very, very see advice. We are so used to everything being bigger, bigger, fancier, fancier, especially today. moving forward now to the present time of 2025. Back in the 80s, things maybe were more simplistic in certain mannerisms, where today we are so in expectation of everything excessively grandiose, even in certain suggestions to be so excessively grandiose. I'm going to perhaps disappoint a few folks, because the tip that I have for today that worked extremely well for me, even on about a $25 a week grocery store budget. Not even kidding you. And I even planned my lunch around that $25 a week. Okay. So, yeah, but I did it. Okay. I did it. And here's my best, most simplistic thing that I did that helped me and absolutely worked for me back in the 1980s at the grocery store. I only purchased the stuff that I needed. Why? You mean you never got yourself anything you wanted? A little bit of a something something, maybe once a week. And that was a maybe. That's maybe, because the really thing that I wanted was to make ends meet. So for me, see, this is where my priorities were lying. And yes, you could still even purchase stockpile items when you're on a tiny, teensy weensy budget. Now, again, I stress that $25 then was probably about $40 equivalent to right now. I am curious to know, you don't have to tell me, but I am just suggesting to you that I'm curious that I would know. How many folks out there listening keep a $40 a week going to the grocery store budget here and now during the challenging prices of 2025? Yes, yes, yes. There are moments when things have been going down, and I'm very grateful for that. I don't know about you. I would imagine you are too. When I learned that the certain things that I normally would buy went down 50 cents, 60 cents, hey, yes, kudos. It all adds up. But for me, the trick that worked for me, now some people may get like frustrated. Oh, you mean you only bought things you needed? But here's the smart thing that I did. I looked for creative ways to get to do things that I wanted to do. Just because there are things I want to do, does that mean there has to be an expensive price tag that goes with it? Because back in the 1980s, keep in mind, I was only in my like middle 20s back in the 1980s. Okay. I wasn't always 66. Ah. So that's the era when you kind of sort of like really like have a lot of wants over a lot of needs. But I learned at a tender age that if I want to meet my bills, to me, meeting all my bills, having a roof over my head, didn't have to be a fancy roof, but it had to be a roof. Okay. Making sure, of all the good essentials, never skipping meals, things that are very, very important. They weren't fancy schmancy meals. They were meals, okay? And I made sure I try to make them interesting. I try to variate things. It's amazing how, let's think about something for a second. And this is kind of a good thing. People need to tap in more often than not on their naturally creative abilities. We are all meant to be creative. Let me repeat that. This is the teacher in me. Let me repeat that. We are all meant to be creative. Why do you say that, Jan? Well, because we came from the master of all creators. Okay, let's think about that. My Father God is the master of all creation. He gave us the ability to be creative. That means, especially in times of challenge, in times of maybe perhaps even hardship, okay? And I did everything with no outside help whatsoever. I did it all, and I proudly say that it wasn't easy. No, 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 no. If I'm going to sit here and say, "Oh, it was a piece of cake," "Oh, it was so simple and easy," that would be a bold-faced lie. And to be honest with you, I think lying is a terrible thing. Lying is just wrong. It's just horrible, wrong. It's just not the right thing to do. It was not easy. Was it accomplishing and doable? Yes. Yes, it was. So those extremely early days when I was in my 20s, but I also learned during that time, you gotta put away a little something in a stockpile. Now, at that time, I kept my stockpile very simplistically for just about 2 weeks in advance. Okay. But believe it or not, people that I knew weren't even doing that. So I was like 2 weeks ahead of the game, for a person in my 20s in the 1980s when nobody really talked about that stuff. Dial your mind back. If you're of a certain age, let's say you're in my age bracket, think back for a minute. How was it for you in the 1980s? Were they, as they call, the hungry years for you? There was like an expression called the hungry years. Okay, we didn't just leap into things. A lot of us were not trust fund babies. You know that expression, trust fund babies. I mean, a lot of us just came from regular hardworking families that paid their bills, maybe scraped a little bit away, and yeah, many of us came from that. Okay, but certainly a lot of us were not trust fund babies. Okay, uh, things were not handed out. We worked hard for the stuff that we got. Okay. And then we learned as we got a little older to not only work hard for it, but to also work smart for it. And that's its own show. Believe you me. So, okay, so you're probably saying, well, what really is the point of this message? I'll give it to you again. I said it earlier, but I have no problem repeating it. The point of this message today is very simplistic, okay? When you're in very tough times and you're going to the grocery store, buy what you need. Okay. And that will give you wiggle room to save some money and buy a little extra for stockpile item. I don't care if it's one can of beans. I don't care if every single time you go to the grocery store, if you find it very challenging right now, we go to grocery store, buy a bag of beans or a can of beans. If you don't like beans, buy the thing you like. That's, like maybe rice or that extra box of pasta or that can of tuna. You do not know. We do not know when these items will come in handy. So you buy one or two of them every single time you hit the grocery store. Okay. These things are doable. Buy what you need. Now, does that mean you are in total deprivation all the time? Oh, I never get anything I want. Don't do that. Do you like to take a bubble bath? Then carve out an appointment. Yes, bird clock. It is now 6 o'clock in the morning, the week before in New York City. Here you go. Good morning, Birdie. I started a little bit earlier today. So, all right, let's go back to this. This is important. Wants are important as much as needs are important. But for the time being with the challenging prices and stuff, I don't want anybody to go hungry at all whatsoever. And obviously, if you need to go to the food bank, you go to the food bank, of course. And obviously, if you need to take extra help, people that need to get the services that are for folks in actual need type thing, please go forward and do that. Okay, especially if you have children. Goodness gracious, of course, absolutely. But okay, so let's suppose that you don't want to go that route. You want to continue on, doing it on your own terms. Please make sure you include some of your wants. Now, just because you have wants does not mean the want has to cost. Okay. I want to meet my friends. I want to see them. Yeah, you could go meet your friends. Plan a lower cost activity. You still get to meet your friends. Oh, but they want to go shopping at the mall. Okay, you could go shopping at the mall, but on that day, you could look around and maybe question some of the prices by window shopping. Not everyone can do that. So if you find yourself that you're a vulnerable type in those malls and you can't deal with window shopping, don't do it. That's my best advice on a case like that. I was just about to say when the bird clock went off, if you like bubble baths, cost you what, zero? Great. Carve out a time and a day. Tell the whole world in your home and family, today is bubble bath day for me. And I'm going to close that door and it's bubble bath day. Bye. So then, take an hour, like put on some of your favorite happy music, whatever. Okay, you feel refreshed, you feel renewed, you feel relaxed. Anything that makes you feel relaxed, okay? Music, anything, a movie, find something on a free streaming app, We have so many opportunities to take a walk in your neighborhood, go to your a local park, just sit there and breathe. Bring a cup of coffee that you made from home with you, and just like kind of like just like sit there, stare, do some people watching, whatever. And then, whatever it is. I mean, you have to find your happy place. I cannot figure out your happy place. But your happy place does not have to be a costly happy place. But do include some, as I call it, me time, away from business matters, away from troubles of the world. Turn off that negative informational news. Turn it off. Say to yourself, today I am not and I refuse to listen to negative information. Just get the vital, maybe need 5 minutes of the headlines, and then turn it off. Because what they do is they give you like like a bullet point at the beginning of the top of the hour on these news outlets. And then what they do is they keep repeating the same idea over and over and over in your head, like all day long. Turn that off. Put on your favorite music or movie. Go dancing. Honestly, seriously. Maybe treat yourself to one of your favorite snack cakes once in a while. The ones that cost $1.25. Okay, not the $10 snack cakes. The $1.25 snack. Find something that is for you. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. And I truly appreciate everybody's time. Don't forget to come back every single morning at 5 o'clock. And during this month of June, there's going to be multiple uploads on some days, not every day, many days for the remainder of the month of June. There are so many people really upset about things in terms of needing money, stretching money, or ideas. I said, I'm just going to spill out a few more extra videos this month. I just seem to feel that the good Lord is telling me to fill a need, basically, to fill a need. There may be one or two people, or maybe 10 out there that may get a message that resonates to them. Don't forget to click like, share, and of course, subscribe. Thank you.